Well, happy Monday, everyone. We're back at it again, going through the New Testament. I'm loving going through the book of Acts and seeing the way Jesus continues his work through his people, empowered by the Holy Spirit. I'm sure you guys are as well. And today we come to Acts 16, the second half of Acts 16 and Acts 17. Some cool stuff going on in this passage, but I want to zoom in particularly to the part at the end of chapter 17, looking from verses 16 all the way to the end. This is where Paul is dealing with the people in Athens. I think it's pretty incredible. What we see from Paul here is a pretty cool model of how to engage culture and share the gospel. Now, as we read the many different sermons in Acts, the evangelistic sermons in Acts, we can glean bits and pieces from them. We have completely different context to what they were in back then, but some of the truths and some of the methods they used can still be really helpful. I think what Paul does here is able to give us a real good idea of how we can engage with our culture and how we can look for opportunities to share the truth with them. I've just got a few different points that I want to make. And the first one is this: you should let your heart break for the culture around you. Let your heart break for the culture around you. Look at verse 16. It says, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. Paul looks around, he observes what's happening around him, and he sees that there's idols everywhere, that these people have a spiritual hunger, but it is going unsatisfied because they're just looking towards these idols. Sometimes we can look at the wealth and the joy and the supposed happiness in the world around us and sort of think they've got it all. They're happy. They've got the life that they need. We live on the northern beaches. People are wealthy and healthy, etc. But life without God is empty. All these idols that people are spending their time on are empty and leaving them spiritually hungry and thirsty. So we should firstly let our hearts break and be distressed at the idolatry going on around us, because people are going without life, going without Jesus. Second thing we see Paul do is be a gospel presence. Have a look at verses 17 and 18. It says, he reasoned with people in the synagogue, with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? Others remarked he seems to be advocating foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Be a gospel presence. Paul was a presence. He was there day by day in the marketplace, in the synagogues, hanging out with different people. He was a constant presence day by day, but he was a gospel presence. He was actually using it to reason with them and to preach the gospel. What's it say there? He's preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. So we should be distressed at the culture around us, but then we need to be a gospel presence. Be amongst people who don't know Jesus. But don't just hang out. Be a gospel presence. Tell them, when you have the opportunity, the good news about Jesus and his resurrection. Third thing we can glean from Paul here is that he knows the culture really well. Verse 23, Paul says, as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, looked carefully, right? I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. He knows their culture. He knows that they love gods and they're people who are made to worship and are excited about worship. Then even look at verse 28. He quotes two of their poets. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. He knows their culture. He knows their religion. He knows the people that he's dealing with. And we need to know the same about the people around us. What makes them tick? What makes them get out of bed in the morning? Where are they putting their worth? Where are they finding their identity and purpose? The only way this can happen is by spending good quality time with people around us. We need to know our culture. And I think Paul also knew his culture's yearnings. That's the fourth thing. We need to know the yearnings of the people around us. Again, verse 23. I walked around, I found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. Paul realized that the people in Athens were made to worship, as we all are. He saw that they had a desire to worship, and they were so superstitious that they needed to find another God to worship to make sure that all areas of their life were ticked off and okay. And Paul says, oh, you're missing out. You're missing out. You've got this unknown God. I'm going to come in and fill that blank for you. He knew they were yearning for a sovereign, powerful, trustworthy God to step in and fill that place of that unknown God. And Paul's like, well, I got some good news for you. What are the yearnings of the people around you? Again, like we said before, what are they putting their worth in? Where do they find their identity? What are they really longing for? Is it comfort? Is it security? Is it truth? Is it life? Is it joy? We know that the gospel is the only true answer to these things. We need to find those entry points and share with them the beauty of the good news of Jesus. And then the last thing Paul does is he tells a better story. We see his sermon in verses 24 to 29. He tells them a better story. He says, you got all these gods, they may do all these great things, but my God is the one who is above everything. He is sovereign, he is powerful. He decides who lives where. He is the one who creates all things. We don't serve him, he serves us. He has died, he sent his son to die and rise again, and will come back to judge. Paul told a better story. And that better story includes judgment, because that is part of the gospel. So once we know our culture and know their yearnings, we need to tell a better story. We need to tell and show them how the gospel is the answer to their true desires and yearnings. Jesus tells us that he gives us life and life to the full. That we have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. There's equality and justice and peace. That we will sit in a new heavens and new earth where all things will be renewed one day. We are custodians of the truth, which is a better story, which is in the yearning of every heart in humankind. Let's tell that story. What's Paul do? His heart breaks for society around him. Let our heart break. Let us be a gospel presence. Let us know the culture. Let us know their yearnings, and then let us tell the better story. The truth of Jesus and his resurrection. Go in peace, inspired to do the same today.